Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Willibaldo Garcia versus Rene Calixto rematch. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So this is the rematch in which was an underrated contest. You know, they were fighting for the IBF Super Flyweight title, which became vacant from Fernando Martinez, who obviously went on to fight Ioka in the rematch. And seemingly, I think it might have been the IBF getting involved as to why Martinez vacated. Like I say, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that is the reason. And you know, it would be no surprise realistically. It's no shock the IBF getting involved and forcing a world champion to vacate. And so, you know, of course, for Martinez, it made sense for the bigger fight to be the rematch against Ioka in Japan. But inevitably, it did make for a very exciting fight between Garcia and Calixto in the first fight. And to be fair, I think it definitely lived up to any sort of hype realistically. And it's now, you know, we're now seeing the rematch and it's fully deserved. It was a draw the first time, and of course that means the IBF World Super Flyweight title is still on the line, and it's definitely in a time in which the division is getting really interesting because of course we've just seen Martinez beat Ioka in the rematch, and we also have coming up Cafu versus Rodriguez, which is of course a unification bout. So you know, again, you know, it's a really interesting time for the champions. And you know, yes, on paper this is a fight in which isn't as big as the other ones and isn't making as noticeable of a name of a champion, but inevitably, again, like I say, it was a good fight, the first one. And I think Calixto got surprised a little bit, and I think he did get, you know, he recovered well, and he had to deal and he had to dig deep, and he did, you know, inevitably go on to do well in the second half of the fight. But to start off with, Garcia was having quite a lot of success. He was continually walking forwards. It definitely wasn't the most technical of matchups between the two of them, but like I say, he was continually walking forwards and, you know, really trying to put on the pressure and just constantly letting his hands go. And you could see that Calixto wasn't really wanting to have too much of it, to be completely honest. You know, he was willingly just going onto the back footing, letting Garcia come forwards, and Garcia was throwing from, you know, all kinds of angles in which perhaps weren't defensively the smartest, and you know, he definitely wasn't covering up the best or anything like that. But he didn't really seemingly care about that. He just cared more about the pressure until Rene did end up landing a good shot and did end up, you know, somewhat stumbling Garcia. But you know, he managed to recover well, Garcia. And to be fair, I think into the latter part of the fight, I would say Garcia possibly may have done enough to win the first fight, but obviously it ended up being a draw, and it's not something in which I've got much of a problem with, you know, results wise and scorecard wise and things like that, because you know, inevitably we now get to see the rematch, and the rematch is in Mexico, and I think that makes it much better because obviously the first fight was in Japan, and it probably didn't bring the same kind of level of fans due to the fact of being in Japan with two Mexican fighters. And yes, a lot of lower weight division champions are from Japan, but you know, these guys aren't. And when two Mexican fighters are fighting against each other, I do believe that they should be fighting in Mexico, because I think there is a great boxing fan base in Mexico, and they've of course, you know, always shown out for any of Canelo's cards whenever he's come over to fight in Mexico. So I feel like this is a great opportunity to have these lower weight division guys fighting in Mexico and to, you know, create a bit of a fan base there. And it is a true Mexican clash, these two guys. You know, it's going to be a firefight. Yes, perhaps they're not going to stand right in the centre of the ring because Calixto is going to be the smarter boxer inevitably and try and time and try and counter Garcia onto a punch. But is he going to be able to do it? Is he going to be able to land a shot which is significant enough for Garcia to be rocked as he did in the first fight? And is he going to be able to follow up on it and, you know, slow down Garcia? Because I think he just had a real problem in slowing down Garcia in that first fight to Rene. And so, you know, we will have to wait and see if he can do it in this contest. In the way of who I think is going to win, I think that Garcia is going to be able to win. Willibaldo Garcia, I think he's going to be able to win via majority decision. I think it is going to be, yet again, another very close, very well contested fight in between, two guys in which are going to make for another entertaining contest. I just think inevitably Garcia is going to come forward, is going to just continually bring the pressure, is just always going to let his hands go, is going to really put a lot into his punches and inevitably try and gun for some sort of knockout. But I think Calixto managed to withstand some quite big shots in the first fight, so I think he can go and do it again and deal with that, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. But I think it is going to be, like I say, interesting to see if he's going to be able to time and land and inevitably hurt Garcia, because I think if he didn't rock Garcia with that punch in which he did, I believe it was the 6th or 7th round, then I don't think he would have been able to get the draw. And so, I think, like I say, Garcia is going to be able to overwhelm Rene Calixto, and it is going to be a bit of an upset, to be completely honest, because Garcia, yes, has showcased that he can, stand toe-to-toe with Rene Calixto, but Calixto is the guy who was the unbeaten fighter. He is the guy who was, on the come up. Yes, he was ranked lower than Garcia, but, they were both ranked together in the IBF rankings. I think it was like 3rd and 4th, to be honest. I think the 1st and 2nd rankings were vacant, but still, they were right there next to each other. But Garcia obviously had suffered defeats, and one of them being against Paul Butler, which was, quite a close contest. He's had defeats on his record, but most of them are quite early on. I think he hasn't lost since 2021, which was obviously against Paul Butler. And again, like I said, that was a close contest against a world kind of level name. So, he's not had bad fights on his resume at all. And I don't think his record should be, anything looked down upon realistically. And so, like I say, I think Garcia is going to be able to win via a close majority decision. Perhaps we go on to see a trilogy between the two of them next. I probably would doubt it. So perhaps we could see a Cortez fight. I think the IBF rankings in the super flyweight division are a bit interesting. There's not really the best of names around. Cortez is a decent option. Like I say, we could have another all-Mexican clash there. I think perhaps Martinez, the WBA champion, might want to go and try and reclaim his belt and go and try and fight Garcia. That could make sense as a good fight, but I'm not entirely sure if Garcia is going to want to do that, which I wouldn't blame him realistically, because I feel like he definitely, if he's winning the belt, he's going to want to probably defend it against a voluntary defense or even a mandatory defense that might be easier than one of the champions. I don't think he would go on to fight a Rodriguez versus Cafu winner unless he got paid serious money for it, which he might do with Riyadh season with the star name of Bam Rodriguez, but I think it would take a lot. Or perhaps something like an Andrew Maloney. Yes, that's not really somebody in which fans are too excited to see back fighting for a world title, and to be honest, arguably doesn't deserve it. But at the same time, like I say, the actual rankings with the IBF, like I've touched upon, aren't the best, so I think it would be difficult to match him, and he is still ranked relatively highly, Maloney, so perhaps that could happen. But, it's again not really a fight in which I'd be too excited for, but at least maybe then Top Rank would get involved, and that would perhaps bring more revenue for something like a Garcia. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.